Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. AUDRA'S final moments. Kane confesses to Nata, while Lily sobs over his painful video message. AUDRA'S final moments played out with a haunting sense of inevitability, as though the universe had been aligning each choice, each betrayal, each whispered secret to lead to this devastating conclusion. And while Kane stood at the edge of collapse, torn between the love he lost and the guilt he carried, he found himself staring into a camera lens recording the message that would become his most painful legacy, the confession he had hidden for too long. A raw unraveling of his heart as he told Nata everything, admitting that his lies, his manipulations, and his desperate attempts to hold on to something real had ultimately destroyed not only himself but everyone who dared to love him. And in those words, his voice breaking, his eyes flooded with shame and remorse, the weight of AUDRA'S absence pressed down on him like a suffocating tide. For though she was manipulative, calculating, and ruthless in her ambition, her final moments revealed something tragic. The part of her that longed for connection, for someone to see past the armor and the deals and the power plays, someone to hold her not because of what she could offer but because of who she was beneath it all. And yet, when Kane's confession spilled into that camera, it wasn't AUDRA he was speaking to, it was Nata, the quiet anchor he trusted with the truth, the one person he believed could understand that beneath every poor choice, every betrayal, every misstep was a man terrified of being forgotten, a man desperate to carve out a piece of permanence in a world that thrived on erasing people when they faltered. And as those words echoed across the recording, Lily, far away yet connected by the cruel fate of timing, opened the painful video message that would leave her shattered, her tears streaking her face as she clutched her chest, hearing the tremor in Kane's voice when he spoke her name, not in anger or blame but in sorrow and love, the kind of love that was broken and battered, but real enough to make her remember every moment they had once shared, from stolen kisses in the quiet corners of Genoa city to the fiery arguments that tore them apart. And in that painful moment, Lily realized that Kane had never stopped loving her, even when he had lost himself to AUDRA'S schemes, even when he had chosen lies over honesty, survival over vulnerability, and she wept because the message wasn't just a confession to Nata. It was a farewell letter to everyone he had ever hurt, a desperate cry for forgiveness, a plea to be remembered not as the man who ruined everything but as the man who tried, who stumbled, who failed, yet loved with every broken piece of his being. And as AUDRA'S story closed with her tragic final breath, Lily's grief became the haunting melody that would carry Kane's words through the halls of memory, a reminder that in Genoa city, love and betrayal are inseparably entwined, and even in death or in disappearance, the echoes of one's truth can shake the foundations of the living, so much so that Lily would never again be able to sit in silence without hearing the replay of his voice, cracked and trembling, telling her he was sorry, telling Nata that the truth had finally set him free, and reminding everyone who dared to listen that redemption is never a clean road, but a jagged, painful path lined with heartbreak, regrets, and the faint hope that someone somewhere will understand. Because the truth about Kane's confession and AUDRA'S final moments wasn't just about one man falling apart, it was about the ripples that extended into every life tethered to him. And as the video played in Lily's hands, she remembered the first time she looked into Kane's eyes all those years ago, how she believed in his goodness, his charm, his unshakable devotion to family, and now, staring at the shattered version of that same man on her screen, she saw not just a liar or a failure but the man who had carried the weight of impossible expectations, a man constantly trapped between trying to do the right thing and desperately clinging to survival. And her heart cracked in two because in his voice, she heard not only confession but finality, the subtle way he seemed to know he would not escape the storm alive, that AUDRA'S manipulations, Victor's threats, Amanda's return, and the dangerous deals he made would eventually collapse in on him. And it was Nata, sweet, steadfast Nata, who received the brunt of his raw honesty, because he believed she could handle the truth, that she could look at him not as a failure but as a man who had finally torn away the mask, revealing all the jagged scars he had tried so hard to conceal. And AUDRA, in those last fleeting moments, her breath shallow and her eyes darting with regret, realized she had underestimated Kane's breaking point. For though she thrived on power and control, though she had wrapped herself in the illusion that she was untouchable, her final gaze was not one of triumph but of sorrow, because she too had loved in her own twisted way, loved Kane enough to pull him deeper into her web, yet hated him enough to destroy him if it meant protecting herself, and that paradox, that collision of desire and destruction, would haunt Cain forever, because as he pressed record on that message, his hands trembling, he admitted that he had chosen Audra once when he should have chosen Lily, admitted that he had lied to keep his image intact when the truth could have saved him, and in doing so, he laid bare the ugliest parts of himself, the betrayals, the cheating, the business schemes, the moments he let greed outweigh love, but even as he confessed, he said Lily's name with such reverence that it broke her apart, because in his shattered state, he still saw her as his anchor, his one great love, and she, sobbing alone as she clutched the device, realized that his brokenness was forever tied to her, that the man she once thought she could save was now beyond saving, and as the citizens of Genoa City whispered about Audra's demise, about the deals gone wrong, about the powerful names that would forever be linked to scandal, it was Lily who mourned in silence, holding on to the video like a relic of a life that could have been, while Nata, upon receiving the raw uncut version of the message, was left with the impossible task of carrying his truth, a truth that would unravel friendships, alliances, and illusions, for when a man like Cain finally tells the truth, it does not come quietly, it comes like a storm, crashing into the carefully built walls of everyone around him, and though Audra's last breath was taken with her secrets, it was Cain's voice that remained, echoing long after the cameras stopped, long after the tears fell, long after Lily whispered, "I forgive you," into the empty room where no one could hear her but the memory of the man she could never fully let go.
Because when Cain's voice cracked as he said Lily's name, the universe seemed to pause, as if Genoa City itself understood the magnitude of this confession, and while Lily sat curled on the couch replaying the message over and over, she was dragged back into a torrent of memories that refused to let her rest, the laughter of their children when Cain still tucked them into bed, the passion that once consumed them on nights when love was stronger than betrayal, the bitter sting of every lie that cut her deeper than she wanted to admit, and though she had told herself countless times that she was done with him, that his choices had pushed them past the point of no return, this video ripped the scab off wounds she thought had healed, because here was a man stripped bare, no longer polished or pretending, confessing not only to Nata but to her in the hidden folds of his words, and Lily knew that Cain's torment was as much her own as it was his, for love like theirs was never designed to fade quietly, it was meant to burn, to scar, to echo forever. And Audra's ghost lingered in every syllable, her final moment still wrapped in mystery, because though she had clawed her way into power with cold ambition, though she had manipulated Cain with a ruthless elegance, there was a flicker of humanity in her eyes when she realized the end was near, as though part of her wished she could take it all back, wished she could undo the venomous schemes that had entangled them both, but fate is never kind in Genoa City, and by the time her hand slipped from Cain's arm and her voice fell silent, it was already too late, the damage irreversible, and Cain was left to carry the weight of her absence as if it were his punishment, yet instead of burying the truth, he recorded it, pouring out every secret, every moment of weakness, every betrayal, into the lens that captured his most vulnerable state, and though Nata was the recipient of his direct honesty, Lily became the unintended witness of his soul laid bare, and as she wept into her hands, torn between rage and longing, forgiveness and despair, she realized that Cain's video was more than a confession, it was a goodbye letter, an admission that he was ready to face whatever storm came next, whether prison, exile, or death itself, and the irony was that the man who had spent his life running from the truth was now immortalized in it, his voice preserved in a message that would haunt every corner of her mind, and Lily, strong as she had always been, found herself unraveling, her sobs echoing through the empty room as she whispered his name like a prayer, wishing she could hold him one last time, wishing she could rewrite the choices that brought them here, but knowing deep down that destiny had already made its move, and in the streets of Genoa City, whispers grew louder, people asking what really happened in Audra's final hours, who she called, what she saw, what secrets she took to the grave, and in every rumor, Cain's name surfaced like a shadow impossible to escape, yet while the city gossiped, while alliances shifted, while Victor and Jack prepared their next moves in the wake of chaos, Lily remained frozen in grief, clutching the device against her chest, unable to delete the message, unwilling to let his voice fade into silence, because even though she hated him for the pain, she loved him for the truth, and love, in its cruelest form, was the very thing that kept her chained to a man who was already gone in every way that mattered, and so the night stretched endlessly, Lily replaying the video again and again, Nata trembling as she held her own copy of his confession, and somewhere deep inside, Kane's broken soul finally found the release he had been searching for, even if it left the women who loved him drowning in the wreckage of his words. And as Lily's tears fell, dripping onto the device that carried Kane's trembling voice, memories surged forward like a tidal wave, memories of the stolen moments they had shared in quiet corners of the city, where laughter once flowed freely and love felt eternal, of nights spent planning futures they would never have, of whispered promises made under dim lights, promises that now seemed cruelly naive, and she remembered how Kane used to hold her in the dark, whispering that everything would be alright, that nothing could touch them, that love would conquer all, and now, the irony was unbearable because the man who had vowed to protect her had instead been ensnared in lies, manipulation, and fear, and though part of her screamed at him for every betrayal, for every calculated move that had pulled them apart, another part of her clung to the undeniable truth that his love, broken and battered as it was, had never fully disappeared, that the tremor in his voice, the rawness in his confession, was the echo of the man she had once adored, a man who had fought his demons alone and who now, in his final act of honesty, forced her to confront her own pain, her own guilt, and her own longing, and even as the city outside continued its relentless spin, with Victor maneuvering his power plays, Jack scheming in the shadows, Amanda returning with her calculated interventions, and Nata trying to process the weight of the truth she had been entrusted with, Lily remained frozen, a statue of grief and longing, anchored to the room by the magnetism of his confession, and every replay of the message unraveled more of her composure, showing her details she hadn't noticed before, the subtle tremble in his hands as he held the camera, the way his eyes darted to the side when he mentioned Audra, the faint quiver of his lips when he spoke her name, and each micro-expression was a dagger to her heart, revealing the depth of his suffering, the complexity of his loyalty, and the enormity of his remorse, while simultaneously exposing the cruel reality that some love stories end not with closure but with unrelenting heartbreak, and as Lily clutched the device closer, she imagined what it must have been like for Kane in his final hours, wrestling with decisions that no man should bear alone, weighing the cost of truth against the comfort of lies, longing for redemption in a world that had shown him only consequences, and thinking of Audra, her final breaths, the flicker of humanity she revealed in her last moments, a reminder that even the most calculating hearts carry fragments of vulnerability, that beneath her ambition and manipulation lay a woman capable of remorse, capable of regret, and capable of recognizing that the lives she entangled in her schemes would never be the same, and it was in that recognition, in that quiet acknowledgement of humanity amidst chaos, that Kane had found the courage to record his confession, to leave behind a record not just of his failures but of his truth, a truth that would shake Nata, that would shatter Lily, and that would haunt Genoa City long after the final frame faded to black, and Lily, sitting in the dim glow of the room, felt the unbearable weight of history, of love, of betrayal, and of the unspoken bonds that tie people together even after they are gone, and she knew, with a clarity that cut deeper than any betrayal ever could, that she would never be the same again, that every step she took in Genoa City would be haunted by Kane's words, by AUDRA'S final act, and by the realization that truth, once spoken, can never be taken back, that confessions have a permanence that outlasts life itself, and that the love they shared, though fractured and marred by deception, remained an indelible part of her being, forever intertwined with the pain and the beauty of what had been, and as the hours passed, and the city carried on outside her window, Lily remained ensnared in that web of memory, grief, and reluctant understanding, the video a permanent testament to a man who had loved too fiercely, erred too painfully, and in doing so, left behind a legacy of heartbreak and truth that would echo through the lives of all who had ever loved or been loved by him, and as the night deepened around her, the shadows in Lily's apartment stretching like long fingers across the floor, she found herself unable to separate the man she had loved from the man Kane had become, for every confession in the video, every tremor in his voice, was a mirror to the complexities of human frailty, and she remembered the countless times she had forgiven him, sometimes silently, sometimes openly, believing in the possibility of change, believing that love could redeem mistakes, and yet now, as she replayed the video for what felt like the 100th time, she saw with brutal clarity that forgiveness was not always enough, that even the purest intentions could not erase the consequences of choices made in fear, desperation, or weakness, and she thought of the times Cain had hidden things from her, the whispers he shared with others while keeping her in the dark, the secrets he kept in the name of protection but which ultimately became weapons against them both. And she realized that love in Genoa City was never simply about passion or devotion, it was about survival, about navigating treacherous waters where even the closest bonds could be tested beyond repair. And as Lily sat shivering in grief, the video playing softly in the background, she imagined Cain alone in that room recording every word, the weight of his past pressing down on him, AUDRA'S presence lingering even in her absence, a ghost that would not let him rest, a reminder that the choices he made, the alliances he formed, and the lies he told had consequences that extended far beyond the moment, affecting Nata, affecting Lily, affecting everyone who had ever been touched by him, and she realized that the complexity of human emotion was never more evident than in this singular, painful artifact, this recording that contained not just a confession but a lifetime compressed into a few desperate, trembling minutes. And she thought about the city outside, the gossip, the scheming, the power plays that continued unabated even as a man's soul was laid bare for those he loved most to see, and she could not stop. The tears, the shaking, the deep, unrelenting ache that seemed to consume her from the inside out, for in that moment, Lily understood that Cain's pain was now her own, that his remorse, his fear, his longing, had seeped into her very being, intertwining with her memories of him, and she remembered every stolen smile, every quiet conversation, every argument that had left them both raw and vulnerable, and now, in the shadow of this final, devastating message, every memory was sharpened, every regret magnified, every longing intensified, and she knew that nothing would ever erase the mark Cain had left on her heart, that even as Genoa City moved on, as deals were made, alliances shifted, and other stories unfolded, this one, the story of Cain, AUDRA, Lily, and the painful truth of their intertwined lives, would remain eternal, an unhealed wound that throbbed with the weight of lost love, lost opportunity, and lost trust, and she imagined Nata receiving the confession as well, the weight of it pressing down on her like a tidal wave, forcing her to confront not only Cain's choices but her own, to understand the gravity of bearing someone else's truth, to navigate the delicate balance between empathy and self-preservation, and all the while, AUDRA'S final moments lingered like a specter, a reminder that even the most ambitious, manipulative individuals carry pieces of vulnerability, that the end of life can bring clarity as well as tragedy, and that the lives we touch, the loves we claim, and the mistakes we make are never isolated, they ripple outward, affecting every heart in contact with ours, and Lily, exhausted, broken, and emotionally drained, knew that she would carry the echo of Cain's words forever, that the recording would remain a testament to the man he was, the man he tried to be, and the man he could never fully escape. And as the dawn crept slowly over Genoa City, bathing the skyline in muted gold, she whispered a quiet goodbye, not just to Cain, but to the version of herself that believed love could conquer everything, and in that whisper, in that quiet acknowledgement of loss, of grief, of enduring love, she felt a painful, bittersweet closure, fragile yet undeniable, for even in the wake of tragedy, even amidst the ruins of broken trust, the human heart finds ways to remember, to mourn, and to honor what was, and so Lily sat, clutching the device, the video still playing softly, and though Cain was gone, though AUDRA was gone, and though the city moved on without them, the truth, once spoken, remained, eternal and unyielding, a reminder that love, loss, and confession are forever intertwined, and that some stories, no matter how painful, never truly end, they echo, reverberate, and shape every soul that listens, every heart that dares to feel, and every life that must carry the burden of knowing what was, what could have been, and what will never be again. And in that endless, aching realization, Lily understood the depth of human emotion, the tragedy of choices, and the enduring power of a love so profound, so flawed, and so irrevocable that it could not be contained by time, circumstance, or even death itself.